Well, you remember, if you're a regular viewer of this show, that we had asked that the adultery law be completely tossed out because it doesn't make sense in our modern times. Well, that's what the court has done today. It has completely tossed out this law because it doesn't make sense in our modern times. But more importantly, because it treats women like objects. It treats women like objects of belonging of their husbands. It also takes away from women the basic right to choose who they want to have sex with. A right that the court has recognized today in the most glorious fashion. And some of the things that our judges have said give us a great deal of hope. Chief Justice Deepak Mishra, for example, began with a quote on the fact that legal subordination of one sex by another is wrong in itself and is one of the chief hindrances to human improvement. And he was quoting John Stuart Mill. There were other quotes. Justice Chandrachud, for example, he talked about how a woman's purity and a man's marital entitlement to her for his exclusive sexual possession is an antiquated social idea and no longer has place in our society. He also talked about how sexuality cannot be disassociated from human personality, and human dignity recognizes and protects the autonomy of an individual to make sexual choices. He talked about how being married doesn't basically mean that you are handing over consent for the rest of your life. That the ability to make sexual choices is essential to your human liberty. That the notion that a woman is submissive, or worse still, naive and has no legitimacy, is deeply offensive to equality and to the dignity of women. So, if you're going to assume that we're going to have a conversation today about adultery, that's not the case. Let me first introduce my panel. Joining me on the show today, Aishwarya Bhati, Advocate of the Supreme Court; Rahul Ishwar, author and activist; Kumar Jagidhar, men's rights activist; Suvidat Sundaram is a lawyer with the Supreme Court, represented the petitioner. In this case, Flavia Agnes is a women's rights lawyer and who's done amazing work in the area of women's rights. Kranti Sate is a senior lawyer with the Bombay High Court. Now, the question of adultery, we no longer have to discuss because the Supreme Court has answered that question. It was a unanimous judgment. They've put it away. That adultery law is gone. We'll be wasting everybody's time, including our own, if we continue to have this discussion. The discussion we ought to have at this point is the question of marital rape. I want to remind our viewers that we live in a country where marital rape is not a crime, which means fundamentally this, that women are not allowed to say no to their husbands. So if a husband demands sex, whether that demand is violent, whether that demand is made in a drunken stupor, whether that demand is made out of love or out of coercion, a woman is not allowed to say no as per the law of this country. And in some cases, that woman could be 16 years old, barely even adult, not adult technically, forgive me, by as per the law, but not allowed to say no. Effectively, without a marital rape law, women are possessions without the right to say no. So everything that we have been told by the court today suggests to us that it is time to criminalize marital rape, and that is the next step for us as a society. Will our government be willing to do so? Is it time for us to do so as a society? That's the question I'm asking. Now, government after government, and it hasn't just been this one, has sort of shied away from marital rape because they find it inconvenient. It's a difficult thing to discuss. But it's time now that we begin discussing it. So our phone lines are open to our viewers as well. But I'm going to start with my panel. Aishwarya Bhati, is it time then, given everything the court has told us today, the Supreme Court is teaching us the basics of equality and humanity all over again this month. Given what the court has taught us today, is it time to outlaw marital rape? Aishwarya Bhati.
I wouldn't agree with that, Faye, at least not just yet, because while we are a country which does not criminalize marital rape, we are also a country where matrimonial laws are the only laws where we are all governed by our separate personal laws, where different people are allowed to have, bigamous marriages, have more wives, but depending on your personal laws, you are not allowed. We are also a country where, the divorce, maintenance, etc., is all governed by different kinds of law. And trust me, that's we talk about uniform civil code, but we actually have uniform civil code. Apart from marriage, divorce, and custody and succession issues. Apart from the family issues, we have it everywhere. We are also a country where every marriage that goes wrong, even if partners are incompatible, we see a slew of criminal cases being launched at each other. So those are the real realities. I would love to have marital rape criminalized. Trust me, I would. I think that is the right direction for us to head to. But are we there yet? Can we, sort of hop over a few of these steps and straight away go to criminalizing marital rape? And I must tell you, you pointed out that the wife is 16 years of age. We saw a Supreme Court judgment that came this year itself by a bench headed by Justice Lokur, and they have done away with that discrimination, distinction between a minor wife. So if the wife is minor, then as per the Supreme Court judgment, it is a punishable rape and the consent does not count. So that gap has been filled up. But there is a lot needs to be done. Faye, we have to understand that marriage is a relationship where sexual activity, sexual intercourse is a fundamental, to that relationship. If you're going to criminalize that action in a marriage, it's too soon just yet, because, Supreme Court has also said that marriage without sex is an anathema. So look at that relationship from the, I would in fact like to take you to a different direction. Today's judgment is progressive for another reason, because it decriminalizes one more action in the bedroom. There's a saying in matrimonial law that you have too many laws, too many crimes in a bedroom, and it is like a bull in the china shop. We want to get rid of bull in the china shop. We don't want too many laws, too many crimes governing matrimonial relationships. If you get along, fine, great. If you don't get along, please walk out of it honorably. But that's not what is happening. So it is a long journey. We should head that way, but we're not ready yet. That's my
Flavia
opinion.
Agnes, do you agree?
I agree to some of the points that she made, but I don't agree to all the points that she made. Today's judgment is a landmark judgment because it goes away from the notion that women are chattels, that the husband controls the woman and her sexuality. He can allow the wife to have sex with his consent outside the marriage, but if he does not consent, it becomes an offence. Now, this law is very archaic. This provision was very archaic. This has been done away with so many countries. But in India, this provision was still prevalent. And today, the Supreme Court unanimously has struck down. Now, to come back to the question of marital rape and criminalizing it, and you mentioned that even if the sexual act is violent, a woman has no remedy. I disagree with that. Because under the Domestic Violence Act and under 498A, any cruelty inflicted upon the wife, including sexual cruelty, becomes an offence. She can go to the police and file a complaint. Now the problem is most women do not file a complaint. They do not want to file a complaint against their own husbands for the sexual violence committed upon them. They opt for a divorce, but they do not want to file a criminal complaint either under 498A or a civil remedy or Domestic Violence Act restraining the husband from inflicting sexual cruelty on them. So marital rape, when we talk about it, that it sounds very good. Many countries have done it. But for us, I feel that at this moment, marital rape criminalization will raise many more issues than it solves. And particularly when we have such gruesome rapes happening everywhere around us, minor rapes, fathers raping daughters, gruesome rape, gang rapes, we put marital rape into the same box, into the same domain as 376, as other rapes. according to me, it will undermine the rapes that are happening in the country. And the rape as a whole will be seen as something women are manipulating all the time. Most often the lawyers give a package to women. They file 498, they file for divorce, they file for maintenance, they file under DB, and this will be another avenue there for 376. It will be a whole bunch of litigation, and the woman will not be able to stake a claim or establish her crime because it goes on in a continuous relationship. And the relationship, the difference between a stranger rape and a marital rape is that in a stranger rape, most often it is one-time offence by a stranger, or even if a father raping daughter, though it is a continuous offence, there is a taboo over there. Here in the matrimonial relationship, there is already a agreement that the woman will have sex. But at a particular time, the sex is violent, but next day the sex is not violent, and you go and complain about that particular incident. It's extremely difficult to prove. But more than that, my concern is the woman depends upon the husband for her residence, for her maintenance, for her social support, for her social status. Everything she depends upon the husband, and you single out one particular thing and make it 7 years imprisonment. And you don't look at all the other dependency that marriage has up on that woman, and this will be a law that will stand nowhere. Maybe a few women may be able to take recourse of it, but overall most women will not be able to take recourse to it. And this will unnecessarily create a stigma in society that now women are misusing the law. Again, they're coming under rape law, they're harassing the husband. We have seen it happening in 498A. All the time we are told women are misusing the law, women are misusing the law. Now when rape law comes there, according to me, all rape cases will be seen as misused by women. And that is my worry, that is my anxiety.
Well, unfortunately, just like the court pointed out today, and we actually had Justice Chandrachud say that when a woman enters a marriage, she loses her voice, she loses her dignity. It does seem like this is a sort of situation that our country is prepared to carry on with. We will raise our boys in homes where women are treated badly, where women are treated as sub-citizens, and they will go out to treat other women badly because that is how they were raised. Opening this up to the rest of the panel right now, Suvidhat Sundaram, who joins us right now, lawyer for the petitioner. Mr. Sundaram, first of all, congratulations on the victory for today. The answers that we heard from, or the portions that were read out by the judges today gave us all hope that there is in fact equality for men and women in our country.
In fact, today it's a historic moment, I must say. A 158 years old archaic law got struck down, and we are in fact now called progressive nation with that of the China, Brazil, and Korea. The law, I mean the section 497 and section 198 clause 2 of CRPC, I mean 497 of IPC and section 198 clause 2 of CRPC, both got struck down. Our prayer in our petition was to declare these sections as unconstitutional and arbitrary, and the same 5-judge bench today has held, and this has got far-reaching consequence. That does not mean that adultery is gone from the picture. No, the civil wrong, I mean adultery as a civil wrong, would persist. It would be a ground for divorce. It would continue, just like cruelty or any other ground. People would approach courts for filing divorce petition or whatever. So adultery would continue, but the only point is the penalizing part, I mean the prosecution in the name of adultery, that would come to an end. From today onwards, it's over. And I would just recollect the the opinions given by the judges, their lordships, Chandrachud, because he was batting for self-autonomy of women.
Yes.
And Justice like Rohinton Nariman, he was of the view that this provision is too archaic and it is retrograde because it hails in a times when patriarchy was the norm and the morality, Victorian morality was in force. So therefore, considering all these, today is a day when we have to celebrate that like gay marriage was legalized.
Yes.
The same way today adultery has been declared to be unconstitutional.
Okay. Kranti Sathe, where do you stand on the question of now that adultery is no longer a crime, we should perhaps also look at marital rape?
It's a very progressive verdict. I mean, it was long overdue. Supreme Court, one after the other, has been scrapping archaic laws. After 377, now it is 497. Both men and women will hail this verdict, I'm sure. Women, because under the archaic law, which was passed a century and a half years ago, considered women as the chattel or the property of the man. Because the provision of the section itself said that if the man, the husband, connives or consents to her sexual harassment, then it is no longer an offence. So it was at the desire and whims of the husband to criminalize the person. The men will also hail it because it was discriminatory. Although there was consent, they were consenting parties to the sexual intercourse, it was only the man, the adulterer, who was being punished and who could be prosecuted. So both men and women are going to hail this because it really brings about equality. It also sets the life of dignity for women, because what I have read in the judgments of all the judges, the entire emphasis is on the dignity. The word dignity encompasses both the fundamental rights of equality and liberty, and word dignity, that the life of dignity which the woman was deprived hitherto has been restored to her.
Right. Kranti Sathe, do you believe we should look at criminalizing marital rape?
Yeah, there are too many layers.
Marital rape, there are too many layers to this issue. It cannot be there cannot be a very blanket issue or a blanket statement one can make, because marital rape, the major ingredient in the offence of rape is the absence of consent. Now, in a marriage, in a relationship of marriage, to decide when the consent was absent and when it was present would be very difficult. Very, very difficult. In a jest, I always say that if the rape is criminalized, marital rape is criminalized, we'll have to keep the consent forms aside the bedroom. That we are going to sign the consent forms before entering into any kind of sexual activity. However, excessive sexual demands or sexual harassment, etc., can be a ground for divorce, because it will amount to cruelty. Under domestic violence also it encompasses cruelty to the woman. So but to make marital rape will open up Pandora's box, because today it was with consent, tomorrow it was not with my consent. So it's really going to be a very tough job.
All right, opening this up right now, Rahul Ishwar, Kumar Jagirdar joined us as well. Kumar Jagirdar, go ahead.
Yeah, we welcome the Supreme Court judgment to the extent that the very definition of 497 was, not acceptable to any modern society and, to the today's cosmopolitan world. But that doesn't mean that we have solved the problem. The extramarital affairs and the infidelity is a very serious issue. Now, making it a free society that anybody can go and have an affair or, have some sort of a friendship with somebody, and, it is going to be a civil law, it is not going to be a criminal law anymore, is not going to help us anymore. There should be some sort of a deterrent wherein, we should have some new enactment of a law wherein the adultery should be made gender neutral, and, both men and women should be having the same rights and responsibilities to see that there is some sort of a sanctity for the marriage. See, marriage is a trust. Now, telling that you can always go and have an affair with somebody and nobody is there to ask you any questions, it is not fair for either the victim spouse will be further victimized. So, under the circumstances, I fear that today is a very disappointing day if we take into account the society, because society, the welfare of society and is more superior than the women's rights and men's rights. So, India is known to have very strong heritage and a family system, and the Indian value system is been respected throughout the world. When you make this sort of a situation, when it's free for all, and it is not going to help the cause. And what about the children married from a adulterous relationship? Who will take care of the children? The father will not accept if a wife is going and sleeping with somebody. Then then the court will say you pay maintenance. Then that fellow has to say that I have a paternity test. Now all these problems will come in the future, and we should be ready for that.
Kumar Jagirdar, hang on. Mr. Jagirdar, you are of the opinion that because of this decriminalization of adultery today, people will go out and have affairs. So, are you saying that until today nobody had affairs because it was a crime?
Yes. No, it is now there is a license to have an affair. At least there was some sort of a fear,
which RTO hands out this license? There's no license to have affairs, Mr. Kumar Jagirdar. You didn't obviously read the order very well. Nobody is giving anybody a license to have affairs. The question is really when there are two consenting adults having sex, there is no criminal law that comes in their way.
Outside the marriage, if somebody has intercourse,
and that also to answer Aishwarya Bhatti's point about the fact that the law should exit the bedroom. Aishwarya Bhatti, the law should exit the bedroom for as long as the people in the bedroom are consenting adults. My question on marital rape would automatically assume that one person is not consenting.
Feminists are promoting marital rape. Marital rape is also entering the bedroom. No, when it comes to man, there is a separate thinking. When it comes to women, there is a separate thinking. Marital rape, again, the police will come to the bedroom. So that is also not fair. If you are telling that adultery law is not proper, that a woman is a private, it's an independent decision, whatever she does. Now the marital law, again, it's a criminal case. It becomes, if it becomes a marital rape, and again the police will be welcome in the bedroom, and police has to investigate. So it is not again good for the couples. It will lead to more divorces and more dividing the couples. It is not a good sign. What we are doing, there should be a debate on this sort of issues, I feel.
Which is exactly what we're doing right now. We're having a debate on these sort of issues. One person hasn't spoken.
Can I please interject?
Okay, Aishwarya Bhatti, go ahead.
Yes, there should be by the...
Yeah, I just want to say there is a very interesting reflection in the judgment on this issue where the judgment says that, adultery is not usually the reason for a failed marriage. It is usually a consequence of a failed marriage. Now, we have to understand the reality. Women will not stay in adulterous marriages or marriages where they have to face sexual harassment and marital rapes. They will not stay in those relationships just because that particular offense is described as a crime in the Penal Code or not. They continue to stay in those marriages and relationships because the society, the patriarchy shackles them in some way, and also they don't have the financial independence to walk out of that abusive marriage and make it on their own or live on their own. Those are the harsh realities. But I also want to make one reflection that today's judgment also is it reflects the beautiful journey of the Supreme Court itself, where Supreme Court earlier also had an occasion to look at adultery law. Interestingly, that bench comprised of, father of Justice D.Y. Chandrachud, who was member of today's bench, and they found nothing wrong with the adultery section in the Penal Code at that point in time. There's a very interesting line that I have quoted earlier also, that Supreme Court has said that, fundamental rights are like empty vessels, and every generation has to fill those empty vessels with its own wisdom. So this generation has filled it with its wisdom. The Supreme Court has reflected that sentiment of this generation and found this really lopsided penal provision of adultery to be completely archaic and to be completely wrong. Now, adultery continues to be a matrimonial wrong. It continues to be a civil wrong without the lopsidedness that was there in the penal code. So it is equally applicable in civil and matrimonial wrong. It is equally applicable for both the spouses. Whoever is indulging in adulterous relationship, and the consent and connivance of the husband is completely immaterial. So this is a very, very positive step. It's going to be a pathfinder. It's going to be a milestone. But marital rape, we still have a very long journey to undertake, Faye.
All right. Rahul Ishwar, I understand he's in a car right now and the connection is a little bad. Rahul Ishwar, my first question to you is going to be, the Sabrimala verdict is expected tomorrow. Are you nervous? Are women going to be allowed in? Are you excited?
Already 4 lakh plus women visit Sabrimala every year. There is no issue for women. That's a misrepresentation. But coming to this particular topic,
yes,
we will know what happened tomorrow. We will see. Definitely, we are hoping that Article 25 will be protected, and especially even in this case too. Congrats to Mr. Suvidas, a very eminent young lawyer, and also to Mr. Kalishwaram Raj. Having said that, we believe every legal framework should be to strengthen the basic idea of family and the foundation of family. That's the reason why we argue for things like marital education and premarital education on family education to be the more important things. In US states like Colorado, they have family education bill, and even in Indian Christian churches and Indian Christian community, they have premarital education and orientation. We need such kind of things that are really progressive. And I concede that some of the particular phrases in this 497 section has been a bit archaic, where it implies that female is a particular property of a male. These things can be changed. Having said that, I believe the central government position was more right. We shouldn't
Oh, we seem to have lost that connection with Rahul Ishwar, Rahul, if you can hear us, go on. Okay, we don't have that line. We'll come back to him. But Rahul, coming back to the fact that if we remove adultery if we decriminalize adultery, that perhaps it will be a threat to society. Flavia Agnes, do you want to address that both from Rahul Ishwar and Kumar Jagirdar? The threat to society and family values and to the the building blocks of society. Yes, go ahead, please.
I feel that fidelity, matrimonial fidelity, and matrimonial commitment to each other cannot be enforced by the state. You cannot hold a police ka danda and you say now you be fidel to each other. On the other hand, the existing law of 497 allows the husband to barter his wife, to let her sleep with anybody he desires, but only when she does it out of her own free will, it becomes an offence under 497. And this part is what is extremely one-sided, extremely gender unjust, because this premise treats women as the property of the husband, where he can barter, he can sell, he can commercialize, he can do anything, but she cannot do on her own. And I think the problem lies with this. It is not on sexual matrimonial morality, it is not on matrimonial fidelity, it was on the power of the husband over his wife. And I think we need to have that very clear. When you say society will go astray, people will go astray, they will sleep with anybody. Husband could always sleep with anybody he wished and nobody could talk about it. Nobody could control over it, had control over it, because wife was economically dependent on the husband. Only the wife could not do. This curtailed the woman's autonomy, and that's exactly the words the judgment has used, that women's dignity and women's autonomy was curtailed by this provision. Now, those who are defending this provision on the ground that marriages will go astray, women will get pregnant and come, and husband has to pay maintenance. I mean, these are such archaic logic, archaic arguments. I cannot even believe lawyers today are saying this. matrimonial if adultery is a matrimonial offence, it is applicable to both husband and wife. If both want to allow adultery to be in their marriages to be open and continue for the sake of children, they do so. If they do not want, they can file for divorce either under a mutual consent provision or using adultery as a fault ground of divorce. So this particular taking away 498A or striking down 497 in no way affects the stability of marriage or otherwise.
Yes.
The marriages, if you see in the matrimonial courts, the number of men and women coming for divorce is enormous. So, and they do it because women today have autonomy. Today women are working. They are not so dependent on their husband. So at least they can get a divorce, particularly on the ground of cruelty, including marital rape. They can come and say there is cruelty here. This husband is violating my dignity, my autonomy, my freedom. All these become ground for divorce, and that is much more a civilized way. I don't think anybody was filing criminal complaints under 497 because it was there on adultery. It must have been, it's hardly used law. What is used is the matrimonial provision of divorce. And yet I find the lawyers are defending this provision, which was not even in use. This archaic law was there when divorce was not there. When the IPC was framed, even in Victorian England or in India, divorce was not permissible. So husband used to use this provision. Today when divorce is permissible, why should we have 497? Yes. I see no point in having 497, 498. Absolutely. Kind of, not 498A, I'm talking about 498. These two provisions are linked provisions.
Well, Jagidar, do you want to quickly respond?
Power over his wife, that she is his property, she is his chattel.
Kumar Jagidar, quick response from you. Yes, go ahead.
See, now that divorce, it is open only for taking a divorce if the victim spouse comes to know that the husband or wife whoever is doing a adulterous relationship, he can only seek a divorce. Now, if you go to the family court, and it will take 7 to 10 years to get a judgment, for favorable judgment. And what about the evidence, quality evidence? How do you prove adultery? That suppose wife is in adulterous position and in a compromising position. Now that is not going to, no court will give a judgment in favor of the husband. They will say, this is not adultery at all. And what about the video? That is not acceptable. What about this thing? There is no support system. Nobody will come forward and give evidence in favor of
one second. The arguments that you're making are against divorce in general and unhappiness in general. No, Kumar Jagidar, one second. You seem to
always get relief in the Domestic Violence Act, but husband has nowhere to go. We demand Domestic Violence Act should be made gender neutral.
Okay.
Otherwise, the society, no man will get married in the future.
Kumar Jagidar, can you hear me? Okay. You seem to be arguing against unhappiness.
Yes, now, I can hear you.
There is no law really, and we're digressing from this specific topic at hand, which is the adultery law that has been removed by the Supreme Court. There is no proof that if you decriminalize adultery, that unhappiness will grow in this manner. So we should stay on point. And I just want to ask, Kranti Sate, do you want to respond to the questions raised by Kumar Jagidar?
No, we don't.
Kranti Sate is a family lawyer. Ms. Sate, go ahead, please.
Please come back. Please come back.
Ms. Sate, Kumar Jagidar's questions. Ms. Sate, if you can hear me, I just want to get our PCR to get our audio together. Can all the guests hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Kranti Sate, Kumar Jagidar raised a question about if you remove this adultery law, then there will be greater instances of adultery, and people will then only have the option of filing for divorce, which takes a really long time to work through. What's your response to that?
No, I think he is a little confused about removal of adultery. Even if the adultery remains on the statute, which is not the case now, I mean, how does it really help in getting the divorce faster? What is it that I'm unable to understand his question? Can you repeat it, Kiran? Kumar,
Jagirdaar,
can you
please go
repeat
ahead.
your
That is
question?
not my this thing was 497 was not useful for men. No, no, please understand,
What is your
497, I am
question?
not
What
in
is your
favor of
apprehension?
497. No man was ever got a relief in 497. Please understand, my problem is, a wife has got so many options. She can go to Domestic Violence Act. She can file a 498A. Where shall a man go? A victim husband, where shall he go if he is aggrieved? Is my question. So make Domestic Violence Act gender neutral so that there will be equal footing.
Okay.
As per our constitution,
I'll answer your question.
Article 14 says no discrimination of gender. Why protection of only women? Why not protection of men? They are aggrieved men also in this world. So many people are coming to us day in, day out. They are committing suicide because they are not getting justice. What about them?
Kumar, there is also provision that the state can make laws which are to promote the welfare of the women and the children. So that does not really violate anybody's fundamental right. You are aware of that provision. Also, you said what happens to the man? He doesn't have any
where will
recourse
a man
to
go?
Domestic Violence
my
Act
problem is,
or
where shall a husband
498A.
go? You agree that husbands are being harassed? No, you are
Where will the
agreeing
man?
that
I will
husbands
answer
are
that. I
harassed?
will answer that
No,
to you.
Where is the avenue?
In
Where
the-
is
in
the
the
window for
context of
husband, harassed
adultery.
husband to go? Yes,
Kumar,
please tell me.
Kumar,
In the context
in
of
the
adultery,
context
tell
of,
me
we
now.
are discussing this in the context of adultery. In the context of adultery, it still remains
enough.
a civil wrong. It still remains a civil wrong and a ground for divorce. So if a man, has to approach the court on the ground of his wife's adultery, he can file a petition for divorce. And if he can prove the adultery by her, he can be granted the
how many
divorce
years
also.
it take for getting a
So
divorce?
he has the forum where he can
How
approach.
many years would it take
No,
for getting
Kumar
a divorce?
Jagirdaar, you're just being argumentative at this point. The number of years it will take for a
I am
man to
not
get
confused. I am very clear about my thoughts. I know the ground reality.
I'm not calling you confused. I'm calling you argumentative. Mr. Kumar
Jagirdaar. Human
Jagirdaar.
rights violation is going
But
on.
that is not discriminating
Men
a
have nowhere to go.
person.
I am not, anti-woman. Please understand.
Are you quite done? Are you willing to
I'm
listen
not
to
anti-woman.
anybody right now,
I'm
Kumar
telling
Jagirdaar,
that
or do
men
you
are
just
human
want to
beings.
keep talking?
Kumar, this ground for divorce is gender neutral. It is available both to the husband and the wife. So it is gender neutral. So
All right.
the husband has the forum to approach. He can approach the court of law, family court, as you rightly said, and file for divorce petition
I
on the ground
understand.
of his wife's adultery.
All right. Well, this is where it stands right now. And while I thank our panel, I just, in conclusion, while the court has, in fact, said quite clearly that after marriage, a woman doesn't hand over all permissions, all consent, and the ownership of her life and her liberty to her husband. A man is not the master of a woman after marriage. Very clearly noted by our Supreme Court today. We really have a long, long way to go before those words actually turn into action, before women actually have the ability to say no inside of their marriages, to maintain their dignity inside of their marriages and their homes. We look to the law and to the Supreme Court, perhaps, to continue to give us that equality. We'll take a quick break here. Mirana will come back with more news on the other side.